15 points higher for Sensex and about 3 to 4 points higher for the Nifty. Really no change, broadly in line with what SGX was indicating. Friday was also absolutely flat, but still just about 20 minutes into trading. Volumes are yet to pick up. We've not seen any major volumes. As far as broader markets are concerned, 0.25% higher for the small cap index. Mid cap index is also up about 0.25%, not much in terms of changes after the opening. Let's pull up the stock of Fortis Healthcare. It's trading around 3 to 4% higher. The other subsidiary of Fortis is up about 20-odd%, 68 rupees. There has been a demerger over there of the SRL diagnostic business. It was expected, but the details came out on Friday, post-market hours. The management is now joining us, CEO at Fortis Healthcare, Mr. BhavdeepSingh. Sir, if you could just first explain the deal for our viewers. It seems to be a very complex deal, but you're trying to route this particular demerger via an already listed entity that Fortis has?
Sure. I'll try to keep it simple. It is a bit complex, and but certainly I'll talk through it very quickly. So let me start by talking about the fact that that we have two listed entities. We have the Fortis Healthcare entity, which houses the Fortis Hospital business and the SRL diagnostic business, and then we have the Fortis Muller entity, which is also a listed entity, which has the Fortis Muller Hospital and the diagnostic business there, and some small investments. So there are 3 things happening here. One is that the Muller Hospital, Fortis Healthcare is acquiring the Muller Hospital for 43 crore. So the Muller Hospital is going to shift out of the Muller entity and shift over to Fortis Healthcare. The diagnostics business that sits inside Fortis Healthcare today, the SRL diagnostics business is going to shift and is going to move to the erstwhile Muller entity, soon to be known as SRL Limited. So where we end up is all the hospitals sit under Fortis Healthcare under one entity. The diagnostics business SRL moves over to the old Muller entity, and that will house the SRL business and the existing diagnostic business that was there with FHL, with the Muller, and some small minor investments. So you end up with 2 entities. One is a hospital entity, one is a diagnostic entity. If you are a Fortis shareholder today, for every 100 shares that you have, you receive 98 shares of the new entity, which is the Muller entity that I referenced, which is going to be SRL. So again, for every 1 share, you receive 0.98 shares in the new entity. The SRL business, as you might be aware, 56% of the business is owned by Fortis. The other 44% is owned by investors. For that investor pool, for every 1 share they have, they will receive 10.8 shares of the new entity. So that's where we end up. We end up with two freestanding entities, 2 strong businesses, 2 very, very strong brands. And apart from the fact that we believe that this unlocks and gives shareholder value, which certainly is something that we should do, apart from that, and I think looking forward, it gives us 2 strong independent operating businesses with 2 very strong dominant positions in their respective areas with a great future going ahead.
Right. So the merger has been done by the already listed arm, as you explained. Will that help in terms of timeline or the process getting slightly earlier than what was expected?
Look, there's multiple ways to do this, and we've tried to do this in as simple a way as possible. We could have created a separate third entity, but we thought this made the most sense. So when we first talked about unlocking value, we talked about multiple ways that we could have done it. This is the path we've chosen. This is the one we think makes the most sense. We think this is, as deals go, because things like this can be very complicated, this is actually simpler than what it could have been. So I think that, again, multiple options available. We've chosen this one. We think this is the best way to go. I think where we end up is in a very good position. And apart from unlocking the value piece, what I'm very excited about is the fact that as a business head, that we have two businesses that that move forward very strongly.
Right. So in SRL, we don't own fully. We own about 54-55%. What happens to the remaining stake? Is there a lock-in once the demerger happen, or they will use this as an opportunity to exit SRL Diagnostics?
Look, I think the details of that are still being worked out. I think that every investor has an option to explore different options, and we'll finalize those things as we go forward. There is a 9 to 12 month period here where whether it's the valuation, whether it's the specific actions that need to be taken place, whether it's the dynamics of the deal will be finalized. But I would think that every investor will have an opportunity to do what they believe is right.
What happens to the debt on the books for the new entity? Will it be totally debt-free?
The Fortis Muller entity does not have any debt, so there's no debt that comes with it. I think that the new SRL entity that we're talking about, that's going to be the Muller entity, will also not have any debt. For the Fortis business, we're a 4,000 crore business approximately. Our debt levels are very healthy. Certainly, like any organization, you look to bring debt levels down when you can, and we explore options to do that as well. But we're not uncomfortable with where we are. If we can bring it down, we will. I think we'll manage that as we go forward, as any business would. So the SRL business will be debt free. Fortis will maintain its debt levels, but I think they're certainly at manageable levels.
Right. Can you just tell us about the diagnostic business after the split? What are the changes that we are looking at in terms of expansion, the growth? What are the growth triggers for the company?
It is the diagnostics business. Unfortunately, we have the disease burden in India is not lightening up. You're all aware of the numbers when it comes to cardiac. The disproportionate amount of cardiac patients in India compared to the rest of the world. You have 1.5 million new cancer patients being diagnosed every year. So the diagnostic side of things is growing quite substantially. The complexity of tests by virtue of research continues to grow as well. So we see very, very strong growth. I don't think that there's any signs of letting up. We think that we'll maintain a very strong leadership position in the space of diagnostics as well. I think for the hospital side, we had a very good solid first quarter. We expect the rest of the year to be strong as well, with strong double-digit growth, and I think next year is going to be an outstanding year. So just going forward, I think both businesses were well positioned by virtue of presence, by virtue of brand, and I think this move just helps strengthen both businesses going forward.
Right. So can you just tell us about the expansion and investment in SRL as well? Just about the business, return ratio seems to be very high. So once the investment is done, cash flows just continue for a business like SRL?
Look, I think that one is that we have from an infrastructure perspective, our laboratory infrastructure is better than any other that exists in India today in terms of number of locations that we have. I think what you get is you continue to leverage the existing facilities that you have, continue to increase and improve the complexity of testing that you do. So I think that from an ROE perspective or from any sort of return on investment perspective, I think the business will continue to do well. We have invested over time. We do have some of the best technology in the country. The complexity of tests that we're able to do, many of our competitors cannot do, and I think you get the return based on that. So just think about what's happening every year, unfortunately, with dengue. Think about, I just mentioned oncology. The testing that's involved with something like oncology is quite complex, and it requires us to do more and more complex and different types of tests. So I think the return on those are quite high, and we're able to leverage the infrastructure we have, the technology we have, the clinical medical talent we have, and by virtue of that, I think you generate much higher returns going forward.
Right. So, most of our viewers, of course, are, would be aware about Fortis Healthcare. It has a diagnostic business. But now that the diagnostic business has been listed separately, just for our viewers who are not aware, can you just tell us the strength of the businesses, the strength of the brand that we have created so far, which we are now going ahead and demerging?
Look, I think what SRL has achieved so far, I just mentioned earlier that we are the largest diagnostic player in the country. We started out with a very strong focus on pathology. We're expanding into radiology as well. I think that the number of partnerships and collaborations we have, so obviously we have an agreement with them. Fortis has an agreement with them, but there are other large healthcare systems that are partnering with them as well. So I think that that in terms of if you're an investor and if you're thinking about where to put your money and you hear about SRL, I think it's a fantastic business to invest in. I think you have a strong brand with very, very strong credentials from a clinical perspective, from a research perspective. The brand presence is very, very strong. And I think most important is we're investing for the future. And again, unfortunately, none of us want to hear about the disease burden and what's happening in India today. But whether it's cardiac disease, I've referenced oncology, whether it's the neurosciences world, whether it's the transplant space, the number of transplants we're doing continues to grow quite significantly. It's a solid business. We'll be here to serve India. We'll be here to help heal India. And I think by virtue of that, the returns on anything that SRL does will be quite high.
Right. So I was just looking at the return ratios at SRL. They seem to be quite fantastic. A lot of my friends use SRL in terms of the facility, in terms of the products that you offer, or services rather that you offer. And they seem to be saying that it's particularly quite competitive or slightly on the cheaper side. So how are return ratios high and pricing on the lower side? Is it because of volumes?
And look, I think that if you've been around a while, I think you build scale, I think you build efficiency, and I think both of those things contribute. Any organization, I think that any organization in India today has to think about how do you become more efficient, how do you do more with less, and certainly SRL is doing that. So it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear what you're telling me, that your friends are sharing with you. That's good feedback. That's the aim. The endeavor is to provide good value at a fair price. And I think by virtue of expertise, by virtue of process, by virtue of efficiency, we're able to do that and give the customer good value as well.
Right. Sir, thank you so much for explaining us, and congratulations for the demerger of the diagnostic business. We're taking a break.